Hello Pokemon trainers, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Battle Stadium singles video here on iStarly TV. Today we're doing things a little bit differently. We're actually building a team for the new Regulation C right here on stream, or on video I guess. And I'm just going to walk you through my team building process, and then the team that I build in this video I will be using for my first video of Regulation C, which as of the making of this video should be live. The new rule set should be live around tomorrow night. So within about 20 something hours of making this video, we should be able to jump into Regulation C and try out these new Pokemon. So importantly, 4 new Pokemon are being added to the format here. Just 4, unfortunately. I was hoping there would be more, but those are going to be the Ruin Legends. So the 4 legendary Pokemon that you can catch in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. They are all dark types, and they're all really cool, really interesting, and I think they're all going to be really strong as well. So the first video here, I'm going to be showing kind of my team that I want to use, with those Pokemon in mind, and I'm going to definitely be trying to use some of those in my team. I'm not going to use all of them though, because I think that's a little skewed. They're all dark types, so they all share common weaknesses. But anyways, let's kind of start with the team. And like I said, I'm just going to walk you through my personal process for building teams. Before that as well, I'm going to show off a couple of resources that I'm going to be using here. The first is going to be the Maryland Team Builder. I'll put all of the links to these resources in the description as well. And this one here is basically just where you can plug in the Pokemon and it'll kind of tell you any weaknesses they share and stuff like that. So you can kind of plan out, like if you maybe you throw some Pokemon together and you're like, oh, I'm actually super weak to like rock or something like that, then you can kind of balance out the team that way. I don't typically use this when I build my teams, but for this first video, I think it's a good idea to. And then another good resource here that I might try to use is the Pokemon Damage Calculator. And again, I'll post a link to this in the description. And this, you plug in the Pokemon, make sure to set the level to 50, make sure to set the EVs and everything, and it'll show you how much damage its moves will do against certain threats, and of course how much damage it'll take against certain threats. So that's really useful as well. I might not use this for like every single Pokemon in the video, but I think this can be helpful as well. I might also pull up the Pokemon Cerebi page if I find that it'll be useful. If I do that, I'll put a link to that in the description as well. But the video is probably going to end up being a little bit longer, so I'm going to put time codes so that you can go ahead and skip ahead if you need to, or you can kind of see just kind of like the, I guess you could say, table of contents for the video. So with that being said, without further ado, let's go ahead and start. So you'll notice, you've probably seen this on the screen already, the first Pokemon I actually want to build around is one of the new Ruin Legends, which is Chi-Yu. This is the fire and dark type, and it's a goldfish. Honestly, it's probably my favorite of the 4. It's really cool, but all of them are pretty cool. And this is a very offensive Pokemon. So if you'll look at its ability here, it has a unique ability called Beads of Ruin. All 4 of them have an ability called Something of Ruin. And what it does is it basically weakens one of the opponent's stats. So for Chi-Yu, it lowers their special defense. So it basically lowers their special defense by about 25%, or similarly, it multiplies their special defense by 0.75. So the point is, Beads of Ruin, by Chi-Yu simply being on the battlefield, the opponent basically has a weaker special defense stat than it otherwise would. Because Chi-Yu has an awesome special attack stat, that complements really, really well and makes it so that Chi-Yu is going to be hitting really, really hard. So I think this is just going to be a really strong one to start out with. Also, as a fire and dark type, it has great coverage in the meta. So also, before I get to Chi-Yu's set, I will be completely honest with you. I actually don't really have much of an idea of what I want on this team right now. The first Pokemon I wanted to start with was definitely Chi-Yu, but beyond that, I actually don't know who else is going to be on this team. So this is kind of a live walkthrough of me building the team. So kind of funny stuff here. Anyways, the set I wanted to start with Chi-Yu is actually going to be Choice Scarf. So we're going to give it max special attack and max speed with a modest nature. I just felt like, it already hits really hard, and with base 100 speed, it's actually not that fast. Like for an offensive threat with kind of weak defenses, I mean, its special defense is great, but since its HP is so low, it can't really take too many hits. Because it's decently frail, I just think that you want it to be as fast as possible. And so, you know, a lot of the common threats would outspeed us otherwise, like Iron Bundle, Flutter Main, Iron Moth, etc. So I just thought it was a good idea to mitigate that by giving it the Choice Scarf. Now, of course, when it comes to some of the fastest threats in the metagame, a lot of which are Paradox Pokemon, all of them have the option to run Booster Energy, which will boost their speed. So those Pokemon might still outspeed us in certain cases, but I still thought like having the high speed stat on the outset was a good idea. All right, so there's my Chi-Yu set, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and not choose the Terra type just yet. So I'm not exactly sure which Terra type to go with on Chi-Yu just yet. Honestly, it'll probably end up being Fire or Dark, but for right now, I'm just gonna kind of put it on pause, and then when I come back to it later, I'll end up changing the Terra type, because I might end up switching out Psychic for Terra Blast. But anyways, as far as Choice Scarf Chi-Yu goes, now Chi-Yu does get Nasty Plot. Actually, let's open up the moves right here and talk about them. Chi-Yu does get Nasty Plot, which is great for it, obviously, because you could run maybe like Focus Sash with Nasty Plot if you really want to. I don't know if that's necessary though. It also gets Memento, which is a decent support move, but you know, on a Pokemon as offensive as Chi-Yu, I think you just want to capitalize on that and do as much damage as possible. So its move pool is actually pretty limited. Like, it gets Fire coverage, Dark coverage, and then it gets Psychic. And beyond that, it really doesn't get too much else except for Terra Blast. But I feel like it gets everything it kind of needs in order to kind of do a lot of damage. So this is where I'm going to start for Chi-Yu, because I want to run Choice Scarf on it. So the next Pokemon I want to add onto the team is a Pokemon that complements some of Chi-Yu's weaknesses pretty decently, although in all honesty it does share a couple of the same weaknesses, so we're going to have to keep that in mind. But for right now I want to start with Iron Bundle, who I think is just another great Pokemon, another great offensive threat, and it's really fast, and it's got a strong special attack stat, and also some decent bulk as well. So I really want to kind of add Iron Bundle to the team, because again, like I said, I think it complements Chi-Yu pretty well. As for the set, I decided to go with this one here. This is a set that I've used in one of my more recent videos, and I like it a lot. Now, Iron Bundle does have a few options for sets. Unfortunately, Bundle is also a Pokemon who is pretty great, but then it also has a pretty limited move pool. But I really like Sub Encore because it gives me an option for a lead. It's a really fast Pokemon as well, so it can outspeed most things, and I can kind of like annoy certain typical leads as well, and just kind of maybe stop certain things from getting up rocks, or if they go for rocks turn one, I can like encore them and stuff. So it's just a decent lead, and it can still be a pretty solid offensive threat as well. So we're going max special attack, max speed with its timid nature, and we've got Substitute and Encore, and then the two pretty standard moves, Freeze Dry and Hydro Pump, along with the Leftovers item. And I'm going Terra Ground because it covers my weakness to Electric pretty well. So I think I kind of like that. This is a pretty traditional set that I've used in the past, like I said, and I'm just kind of like... This is a pretty traditional set that I've used in the past. This is a set that I've used in the past, and I'm kind of just porting it over to this team because I think it works pretty well. Alright, and so for the third member of the team, I have another Pokemon that is pretty standard, pretty traditional right now in the meta, and I also have kind of just ported over this set that I've used in the past because I think it's just a really solid set on this Pokemon, and that is going to be Goldango. So this is Goldango with a Terra Flying type, and Goldango covers a lot of Chi-Yu's weaknesses pretty nicely. It also covers the common rock and fighting weaknesses from both Iron Bundle and Chi-Yu, the one that they share. So I think it's a pretty good place to be. Also, it is also weak to ground just like Chi-Yu. However, we have the Terra Flying type, which is a pretty solid typing on Goldango. And then from there, we have Covert Cloak, which makes us great against Pokemon like Garganacl, but also just makes us good against other, common moves that people use. And then we have Nasty Plot and Recover, which are pretty standard on Goldango, I would say. And then Make It Rain and Shadow Ball. So yeah, Goldango I think it's just a great Pokemon, needless to say, and I feel like it complements these other two Pokemon pretty nicely. So now that we have something of an offensive core here that kind of cover each other decently well, I actually have plugged these Pokemon into the team builder right here just to kind of take a look at what weaknesses and resistances we're looking at. Now, very nicely, we do have 3 resistances to ice, which is great, so our team's pretty nicely covered. So it means if we add Pokemon in the future, it's okay if they're weak to ice, because these 3 Pokemon can handle ice types pretty well. And then, of course, got a couple resistances to Psychic and Steel, as well as Grass, which is pretty cool. And then as far as weaknesses go, we are weak to fighting. We have 2 fighting weaknesses, 2 ground weaknesses, and 2 rock weaknesses. So we need to kind of keep that in mind as we keep plugging Pokemon into the team. And, you know, we also want to look at possible threats in general. Like, for example, you know, our team, if you look at these weaknesses and resistances right now, our team doesn't look particularly weak to something like dark or fire. However, opposing Chi-Yu could be really scary for us because we don't really have good switch-ins. Like, we do have our own Chi-Yu, which will be able to switch into its moves, but I still think we would take a lot of damage from that given Chi-Yu's ability. So, you know, opposing Chi-Yu is actually pretty scary. Now, what I'm thinking when I'm looking at all of these weaknesses and all of these weaknesses and resistances and thinking of kind of common Pokemon that I could face in the meta, despite the fact that we have 2 rock weaknesses already, I am actually liking the idea of Dragonite here. So I'm going to go ahead and add Dragonite as the 4th member of this team. I mean, Dragonite's just an amazing Pokemon, one of the best in the entire meta. It has been for a while. Now, there is Qianpao coming to the format, which is the Ice and Dark type legend. So that is something that we need to worry about. But of course, we have 3 Pokemon that can... Now, well, here's the funny thing. We have 3 Pokemon that can take Ice moves, but those Pokemon don't love taking Dark type moves, especially from something as strong as Qianpao. So we're going to have to go ahead and keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and add Dragonite right now, and then the next Pokemon, I'll try to bring something that I think is pretty decent against Qianpao. All right, so here is my potential Dragonite set. I honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I kind of forgot which Dragonite sets I've enjoyed in the past, but I like this one here. And so this one is basically as bulky as we can be to take on a lot of the strong physical attackers in the meta and just give us a little bit of a better matchup against Qianpao. I still think Qianpao is going to be a scary threat against this team so far, but I really like the ability to set up Dragon Dance, and then we have Terra Normal to boost the power of our extreme speeds. Of course, from there we can, you know, Dragon Dance and set up our attack stat. And as far as speed goes, I just kind of felt like I mean, having speed is nice, but I kind of felt like I wanted to prioritize the bulk in this spread, and we are running Rocky Helmet as well as a result. This also maybe gives us a better matchup against opposing Baxcaliburs, which are definitely scary as well. So our goal here is just to kind of set up Dragon Dances, maybe roost off some of the damage if we can, and then hopefully sweep in the late game. And I felt like because we're running Extreme Speed with the Terra Normal type, I thought that Earthquake complements Extreme Speed decently well, given that Steel types could be an issue because they can switch into it, and then of course Earthquake can hit those Steel types super effectively. So that kind of just gives us that good balance, that good spread here. And I like this Dragonite set. It also gives us, again, a lot of bulk that we were otherwise kind of missing beforehand. Alright, and for the last 2 Pokemon on the team, I decided to go ahead and have Kingambit with an Assault Vest. This is more offensively oriented. A set that I really like from Kingambit is a bulky one with Substitute and Leftovers, but we already have the Leftovers on Iron Bundle, and I did feel like Assault Vest is just fine on it as well. Now, of course, you know, this is a scary one to switch into opposing Chi-Yus, but it also gives us, you know, some decent typing against a lot of other threats in the meta. You know, I think that, you know, our team didn't look amazing against Goldango. I guess we have Chi-Yu, which is good against it, but, you know, Goldango is another Pokemon that could sometimes give us trouble, and luckily Kingambit is great against opposing Goldangos. So I went for Terra Dark there just to boost the power of our Sucker Punch and Kowtow Cleave, however you say it. And it also removes some of our notable weaknesses as well by terastallizing into a Dark type, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I chose Supreme Overlord as the ability because I think that that's a solid ability on Assault Vest Kingambit, especially an offensive one like this, again, to further boost our Sucker Punches. Now, there is definitely a possibility that Kingambit gets a little worse in this meta, again, because the 4 Pokemon being added are Dark types. They're all Dark types. and I feel like all of them are going to be pretty good one way or the other. So it's possible Kingambit maybe drops in usage a little bit, but I still feel like the rest of my team is decent at handling those dark types, hopefully. And so, you know, Kingambit's just good against a lot of the other common threats in the meta typically. And for the last one, I decided to go ahead and, because of the prevalence or the assumed prevalence of these upcoming dark types, I decided to go ahead and add Fluttermane because it's a fairy type and it hits really, really hard. So I just decided to go choice specs with a timid nature to get the jump on, or rather to speed tie with opposing Fluttermanes, but also Qian Pao is a very scary threat that I've talked about. That's the ice and dark type. Is it like a cheetah or a leopard or something like that with like the fangs? It's really cool, but it also has base 135 speed. So this will allow me to speed tie with opposing Fluttermanes as well as Qian Pao, and hopefully win the speed ties and get off a super strong Moonblast with the choice specs. I felt like with booster energy, you know, it would just be boosting my speed, and you know, sure, getting a speed boost against the opposing Fluttermanes or Qian Paos is nice, and also being able to outspeed something like Iron Bundle, who otherwise outspeeds us, is pretty nice. But also I thought about the other two new dark types coming to the meta, which are both very, very bulky. That is Wo Qian and Ting Lu. Those are both super tanky, and so I just wanted to hit as hard as possible, and so I opted for the choice specs. And the moveset, we've got Moonblast, Shadow Ball, Mystical Fire. Those are pretty standard on Fluttermane. And then finally I added Power Gem as a way to hit, you know, Chi Yu and Qian Pao, and also Iron Moth, which is another really strong Pokemon. So I thought that Power Gem would round out that coverage pretty well. And finally, I decided to go Terra Fire to give me stab on Mystical Fire, so it lets me hit Mystical Fire a lot harder, but also it removes some common weaknesses, and it gives me hopefully a slightly better matchup against Qian Pao and Chi Yu, because I will resist some of their stab moves by turning into a fire type. Now, let's actually calc it, because I'm not even sure with the Terra Fire type if I will survive a move from Qian Pao. I'm just going to go ahead and calc it right now so we can see if that even matters. All right, so here's the calc. As you can see, so if we turn into a fire type, we will actually survive an ice type move from Qian Pao. So if it's like choice, if we know that it's like choice banded or choice scarfed, or we just know for a fact that they're going to go for an ice type move, we know that we can survive it with Fluttermane as a Terra Fire type and then retaliate with a strong attack of our own to knock it out. If they go for crunch though, no matter what we do, we are going to get one hit KO'd. So like, honestly, I feel like a normal smart player would against Fluttermane probably go for crunch anyway, unless they think we might be Terra Fairy, in which case maybe they won't go for crunch. So it ends up becoming a prediction game. So if they go for crunch against us, whether we terastallize or not, we are dead. But if they go for Ice Spinner and we do terastallize, we will survive. So that just kind of shows how scary Qian Pao is, because it just hits so hard, especially against something like Fluttermane with such low defensive stats. Yeah, it kind of sometimes doesn't even matter whether we terastallize or not, but I still wanted to go for Terra Fire because I think it'll be helpful. So finally, looking at the team on the team builder here, we have, if you'll notice, we do have a lot of weaknesses to fighting. Half our team is weak to fighting. However, the other half either resists it or is immune to it. So, you know, there aren't too many common fighting types, although let's actually say it. With the prevalence of these brand new dark types in the meta, it is very possible that fighting types become more prevalent. So there are certain fighting types that might actually rise in usage to counteract these new dark types. So, you know, even though fighting wasn't common in the previous meta, it might be more common now. So I actually might need to be more worried about it. But like I said, Dragonite resists it, and then Fluttermane and Goldango are ghost types, which are immune to it. So even though we have that prevalent fighting type weakness, I feel like we might be okay. We also have a prevalent ground type weakness, although we do have a Terra Flying type Pokemon, which will be immune to that, as well as Dragonite, who is naturally immune to that. Although, in all honesty, a strong ground type or a strong ground type move could wreak a lot of havoc against our team. So we do want to be wary of that. And a Pokemon like Baxcalibur could be terrifying against us if it has Earthquake. So we do want to keep that in mind. Ground is going to be probably one of the scariest types for our team. Finally, we do have a pretty common rock type weakness as well, although once again, we do have at least 2 Pokemon here, well, just 2 Pokemon that resist it, which is pretty cool. Also, rock is really not a common type, although the big thing with rock is, of course, stealth rock. So stealth rock is decently common, so that is something we are going to have to be aware of. It's possible we want something that can spin away the hazards, but for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and hope for the best against rock types and against stealth rock, and hopefully play well accordingly to mitigate that. But anyways, yeah, that's the team. I'm really excited for this team. Like I said, going into this video, I actually had no idea what I wanted to do for this team. All I knew was that I wanted to start with Chi-Yu, and we've crafted what I think looks to be a decently solid team. I'm going to build this team in game, and then on my first battle, or my first video for Regulation C, I will definitely be showcasing this team in game. So let me know what you think of the team. Definitely let me know if you have some suggestions as well, like maybe if someone points out something that's super glaringly obvious that I'm missing, maybe I'll have time to make a change before the video. And of course, in that video, I'll update you on, you know, that change if I do. But hopefully this video was helpful or interesting to you all. And feel free to use my team. When I do build it in-game, I will definitely put out a code for everyone, so you can go ahead and try this team out for yourself. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please leave a like and please subscribe for more Pokemon Scarlet and Violet videos. And I'll see you very soon. Have a great one.